Lisa Kane stood in the center of the massive room, her hands behind her back as she faced the panel of alien judges. The chamber was built for beings much larger than humans, and the ceiling stretched high above her head. Strange lights cast blue and purple shadows across the metallic walls. She had been waiting for this moment for 3 years, ever since Earth had first made contact with the Galactic Council. The council members sat on raised platforms that formed a half-circle around her. Each platform held a different species, and Lisa had studied them all during her long journey to this space station. The Zephyrians looked like giant insects with their compound eyes and thin arms. The Karathi resembled lizards that had learned to walk upright, their scales catching the light as they moved. There were others too, species she had only seen in training videos back on Earth. Admiral Vexstar was the largest of the Zephyrians. His black eyes reflected the room's strange lighting, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. He held a datapad in his thin fingers and read from it without looking at Lisa. "Human designation Lisa Kane," he said. "You represent your species in this application to join our Strike Force division. We have reviewed your military records and those of your people. We have observed your combat techniques and studied your war history." Lisa kept her face calm, but inside she felt her heart beating faster. This was it. Everything Earth had worked. The FOR came down to this moment. If humanity could join the Strike Force division, they would have access to advanced technology and protection from the dangerous groups that attack civilian ships throughout the galaxy. War Speaker Siscol, the leader of the Karathi delegation, leaned forward on her platform. Her forked tongue flicked out to taste the air, and her yellow eyes fixed on Lisa. "Your species shows promise in some areas," she said. "Humans are good at building things. You work well in teams. You can think through problems and find solutions." Lisa felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this would go better than she had feared, but then Vexstar made a clicking sound with his mandibles. "However," he continued, "your species has a critical weakness. You are too soft, too emotional. You think too much before you act." The hope in Lisa's chest began to fade. She had heard rumors that some of the alien species looked down on humans, but she had hoped their military record would speak for itself. "We have watched recordings of your soldiers in combat," said another council member, a being that looked like a walking tree with too many arms. "They check on wounded enemies. They try to capture instead of kill. They show mercy even when their own lives are in danger." Siscol nodded her scaled head. "This is not always wrong," she said, "but it makes you predictable. In the kind of missions our strike force handles, there is no time for mercy, no time for second thoughts. Our enemies are terrorists and criminals who attack innocent people. They must be stopped quickly and permanently." Lisa finally spoke up. "With respect, War Speaker, I think you may have misunderstood what you saw. In those recordings, human soldiers follow rules of engagement, but when civilian lives are at stake, we can act as quickly as anyone." Vexstar's compound eyes seemed to focus on her more sharply. "Can you? We have scientific data that shows humans take an average of 2.3 seconds longer to make kill decisions than Zephyrian warriors. In combat, this delay can mean the difference between mission success and failure. Your brain chemistry works against you," added the tree-like being. "You feel guilt and doubt. These emotions slow your reactions. Our strike force teams cannot afford such delays." Lisa felt anger rising in her throat, but she kept her voice steady. "I have eliminated 47 hostile targets in my military career. My reaction time in combat situations is rated in the top 5% of human soldiers. I respectfully request that you test me instead of relying only on general statistics." The council members looked at each other, making sounds in their own languages. Finally, Vexstar turned back to Lisa. "There is no need for individual testing. We have observed enough human combat behavior to reach our conclusion. Your species excels at defensive operations and long-term strategy. You are good at protecting things and building things, but you lack the killer instinct needed for rapid tactical elimination." Siscol leaned back on her platform. "Humans are Builders, not destroyers. This is not an insult. Every species has its strengths. But the Strike Force Division requires beings who can eliminate threats without hesitation. Beings who do not pause to consider the feelings of their enemies. Lisa looked around the chamber at the alien faces staring down at her. She had spent years preparing for this moment, learning their languages, studying their cultures, training until her body was as ready as it could be. Now, they were telling her that none of it mattered because humans were too kind to be effective killers. "I understand your concerns," she said carefully. "But I think you are making a mistake. Human compassion does not make us weak. It makes us fight harder to protect innocent people. When someone threatens civilians, human soldiers do not hesitate." "Yet you do hesitate," said Vexstar. "We have recordings of human soldiers stopping to help wounded enemies during firefights. We have seen them risk their own lives to save enemy soldiers who were trapped or injured. This behavior is admirable in some ways, but it is not what we need for strike force missions." The tree-like being rustled his arm branches. "We need soldiers who can clear a room of hostiles in seconds, not minutes. Soldiers who can eliminate threats without stopping to check if those threats might survive. Human soldiers spend too much time thinking about whether their enemies have families or reasons for fighting." Lisa felt her hands forming fists behind her back. Everything they were saying was wrong, but she could not figure out how to make them understand. They had watched human soldiers showing mercy and concluded that humans were incapable of being ruthless when necessary. "War Speaker," she said, looking directly at Siscol, "what if I told you that human soldiers show mercy because they are strong enough to choose it, not because they are too weak to do otherwise?" Siscol's yellow eyes blinked slowly. "I would say that you are proving our point. The strike force cannot afford soldiers who choose mercy over mission completion. Our enemies do not show mercy to the civilians they attack." Vexstar made another clicking sound. "The decision is final. Humanity's application to join the Strike Force Division is denied. You may apply again in 5 years, if your species develops more appropriate combat psychology." Lisa felt the weight of failure settling on her shoulders. She had not just failed herself, but her entire species. Earth would remain on the outside of the galaxy's protective forces, vulnerable to the same terrorist groups that attacked other worlds. "I understand," she said. "Is there anything else the Council needs from me?" "No," said Vexstar. "You may return to your ship. We will provide you with a full report to take back to your Earth command." As Lisa turned to leave the chamber, she heard Vexstar speaking to Siscol in what he probably thought was a quiet voice. But human hearing was better than most aliens realized, and she caught every word. "The Crimson Void situation is getting worse," he said. 3 more civilian ships attacked this week. We need to move quickly on the elimination mission." "Agreed," replied Siscol. "How many operatives do we estimate are in their main cell?" "Intelligence suggests 12 to 15, spread across multiple locations in the Outer Rim. They are using captured alien technology, which makes them more dangerous than typical terrorists." Lisa kept walking toward the door, but she filed every word away in her memory. The Crimson Void, 12 to 15 operatives, Outer Rim sector. She had no official reason to care about this information, but something inside her made her want to remember it. Maybe the aliens were right about humans being too emotional. Because as she left the council chamber, Lisa Kane was not thinking about her failure or her disappointment. She was thinking about civilian ships under attack and wondering if there was something she could do to help, even if the Galactic Council did not want her assistance. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving her alone in the station corridor. In a few hours, she would board her ship and begin the long journey back to Earth. But first, she had some research to do. 3 days after her meeting with the Galactic Council, Lisa Kane stood in the docking bay of the merchant vessel Starlight Trader. The ship was not as large as the military vessels she was used to, but it was clean and well-maintained. She wore civilian clothes now instead of her military uniform, and her identification papers listed her as a trade consultant traveling to the Outer Rim colonies. The truth was much different. Lisa was here on orders from Earth Command, but not the kind of orders that appeared in official records. Captain Jake Morrison had contacted her just hours after she left the council station. He worked for a part of Earth's military that most people never heard about, the kind that handled situations other departments could not touch. "We heard about the council meeting," Jake had told her over an encrypted communication channel. "We also heard about something called the Crimson Void. Our intelligence people think these terrorists are planning something big, and the aliens are not sharing information with us." Lisa had agreed to the mission immediately. If the Galactic Council would not let humans help protect innocent people, then humans would find another way to help. Now she walked through the ship's corridors, studying the other passengers and crew members. Her cover story was simple but believable. She was traveling to Haven Station to help set up new trading agreements between Earth companies and the mining colony there. The station had over 50,000 people living on it, making it one of the largest civilian settlements in the Outer Rim. The ship's captain was a friendly Korathi named Cessnil who spoke excellent English. He had welcomed Lisa aboard and seemed genuinely interested in expanding trade between his people and Earth, but Lisa's training had taught her to watch everyone, even the friendly ones. Her cabin was small but comfortable, with a porthole that showed the stars streaking past as the ship traveled through hyperspace. She had been given special equipment for this mission, devices that looked like normal civilian electronics but could detect weapons, scan for hidden compartments, and monitor communications. On her first day aboard, Lisa ate dinner in the ship's main dining area. The room was filled with passengers from a dozen different species, all talking and laughing as they shared their meals. She sat alone at a small table, eating something that tasted like chicken but probably was not, and listened to the conversations around her. Most of the talk was boring. People complained about the food, discussed business deals, or shared stories about their families. But Lisa had learned to listen for the things people did not say as much as the things they did say. At a table near the back of the room, 3 passengers sat together but barely spoke to each other. They were all different species, but they kept looking around the room in the same way, their eyes moving from person to person like they were counting or measuring. Lisa had seen that look before in soldiers who were planning an attack. She finished her meal and walked slowly past their table on her way out. As she passed, she heard one of them say something in a language she did not recognize. But she did catch one word that made her blood run cold. Haven. Back in her cabin, Lisa activated her scanning equipment and began a careful sweep of the ship. The devices were designed to work without being detected, sending out signals that looked like normal background radiation. What they found made her stomach clench with worry. 12 people on the ship were carrying weapons. Not the small personal defense weapons that many travelers carried, but military-grade plasma rifles and explosive devices. The weapons were hidden in modified luggage and equipment cases, spread throughout the ship so that no single person carried too much firepower. Lisa sat on her narrow bed and stared at the scan results on her handheld device. 12 armed individuals on a civilian transport. It could be a coincidence, but her training told her it was not. This was exactly the kind of situation that the Crimson Void terrorists were known for. They would infiltrate civilian ships, then use those ships as weapons against populated areas. She activated her communication device and sent a coded message to Jake Morrison. The message was disguised as a business report about mining equipment, but Jake would know how to read the real meaning. 12 hostiles confirmed, weapons detected. Possible target Haven Station. Jake's reply came back within an hour. His message looked like a response about shipping schedules, but Lisa read the hidden meaning with growing concern. Galactic strike. Force deployed to sector. Estimated arrival 17 minutes after your scheduled approach to Haven Station. Maintain cover and gather intelligence 17 minutes. Lisa did the math in her head. If the terrorists were planning to use the Starlight Trader as a weapon against Haven Station, the Galactic Strike Force would arrive too late to stop them. Over 50,000 people lived on that station, including families with children. Lisa spent the next day moving carefully through the ship, using her equipment to learn more about the armed passengers. She identified them one by one, memorizing their faces and their positions on the ship. Some were crew members, including the assistant engineer and 2 cargo handlers. Others were passengers who had boarded at different stations along their route. The leader appeared to be a scarred Korathi who called himself Thekmor. He was larger than most of his species, with old battle wounds across his scaled face and arms. Lisa had seen his type before, professional soldiers who had turned to terrorism when their wars ended. He spent most of his time in the ship's lower cargo areas, staying away from the other passengers on the second day. Lisa discovered something that made the situation even worse. Using her communication scanner, she detected encrypted messages being sent between the terrorists and someone outside the ship. She could not break the encryption, but she could tell when the messages were being sent and received. The timing pattern was familiar. She had seen it in intelligence briefings about Crimson Void operations. They were coordinating with other terrorist cells, probably planning a multi-target attack. The Starlight Trader was just one part of a larger operation. Lisa tried to send another message to Jake, but discovered that the ship's communication systems were being jammed. The terrorists had quietly taken control of the ship's external communications, preventing any distress calls or warnings from being sent. The other passengers and crew members had not noticed yet, but Lisa knew it was only a matter of time before the terrorists made their move. She began to plan. The ship had 3 main levels: the passenger deck, where most people spent their time; the cargo deck, where the terrorists were gathering; and the engineering deck, where the ship's critical systems were located. If she could get to the engineering deck, she might be able to restore communications or even change the ship's course, but 12 armed terrorists were too many for one person to handle directly. Lisa was a good soldier, but she was not superhuman. She would need help, and she would need to be very careful about who she trusted. On the 3rd day, Lisa found her answer. She was in the ship's small observation lounge, looking out at the stars and thinking about her options, when she heard someone behind her curse in perfect English. "Damn thing keeps shorting out," said a voice with a slight accent. "Captain is going to have my head if we lose main power during the jump." Lisa turned to see a man in work clothes holding a damaged circuit board. He was about her age, with grease stains on his hands and a tool belt around his waist. His name tag read Tony Rodriguez, assistant engineer. "Having trouble?" Lisa asked. Tony looked up at her and smiled. "Just some old wiring that needs replacing. This ship has been running these same circuits for 20 years. I keep telling the captain we need to upgrade, but you know how it is with civilian vessels. They never want to spend the money until something breaks." Lisa studied Tony's face. He seemed genuine, and more importantly, he was human. If she was going to trust someone with what she had discovered, it might as well be someone from her own species. "I might be able to help," she said. "I have some technical training." Tony raised an eyebrow. "Really? I thought you were in the trading business." "I am now," Lisa said. "But I used to work on military systems. Electronics are electronics, right?" As Tony explained the problem with the circuit board, Lisa made her decision. She would have to trust him. The alternative was to let 50,000 people die while she tried to handle 12 terrorists by herself. "Tony," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something important, but not here. Too many people around." Tony looked at her more carefully, noticing something in her tone. "Okay," he said. "My workshop is on the engineering deck. We can talk." There, as they walked toward the engineering section, Lisa hoped she was making the right choice. In a few hours, she would either save 50,000 lives or get herself and Tony killed. But the aliens had been wrong about one thing. Humans did not hesitate when innocent lives were at stake. They just chose their moments carefully. Tony's workshop was located deep in the engineering section of the ship, surrounded by the constant hum of machinery and the smell of metal and oil. The small room was cluttered with spare parts, tools, and half-finished repair projects. Tony closed the door behind them and activated a small device that would block anyone from listening to their conversation. "Okay," he said, setting down his circuit board and looking at Lisa seriously. "What did you want to tell me?" Lisa took a deep breath. Once she said the words, there would be no going back. My name is Lisa Kane, and I am a lieutenant commander in Earth's military. I am on this ship because we received intelligence about a terrorist organization called the Crimson Void. Tony's eyes widened, but he did not interrupt. There are 12 armed terrorists on this ship, Lisa continued. They are planning to attack Haven Station. They have weapons hidden throughout the ship, and they have taken control of our communications. The Galactic Strike Force is coming, but they will arrive too late to stop what is about to happen. Tony sat down heavily on a work stool. Are you sure about this? Lisa pulled out her scanning device and showed him the results. I have been monitoring them for 3 days. Their leader is a Korathi named Vekmore. They are coordinating with other terrorist cells for a multi-target attack. Tony studied the scanner readings, his face growing pale. 50,000 people live on Haven Station, he said quietly, including my sister and her family. They moved there 2 years ago when she got married. I am sorry, Lisa said, but that is why I need your help. I cannot stop 12 terrorists by myself, but together we might have a chance. Before Tony could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Cessnill's voice filled the workshop. But something was wrong. His usually friendly tone was strained and frightened. Attention all passengers and crew, he said. Please remain calm and follow all instructions. We are experiencing a minor technical difficulty that requires everyone to gather in the main dining area immediately. Lisa and Tony looked at each other. They both knew this was not a technical difficulty. It is starting, Lisa said. They are making their move. Through the workshop's small window, they could see other passengers moving through the corridors, looking confused and worried. Some were being escorted by crew members who Lisa now knew were terrorists in disguise. Tony activated his engineering console and checked the ship's systems. They have locked out most of the navigation controls, he said. But I can still see our course. We are heading directly for Haven Station, and we are moving faster than normal. Lisa felt her heart racing. How long until we reach the station? At this speed, maybe 8 minutes, Tony replied. But Lisa, if they are planning to ram us into the station, we need to evacuate. We need to get to the escape pods. Lisa shook her head. The escape pods will not work. They will have disabled them to prevent anyone from escaping and warning the station. Besides, even if we could escape, what about all the other passengers? What about the 50,000 people on Haven Station? Tony ran his hands through his hair. What can we do? We are just 2 people against 12 armed terrorists. Lisa moved to the workshop's tool cabinet and began selecting items. The aliens think humans are too soft to be effective soldiers, she said. They think we hesitate too much and show too much mercy. They are about to learn how wrong they are. She picked up a heavy wrench and tested its weight. When someone threatens innocent people, humans do not hesitate. We do not show mercy. We do whatever it takes to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Tony watched her gather tools and supplies. You have a plan? I have the beginning of a plan, Lisa said, but I need to know more about this ship. Can you access the internal sensors? I need to know exactly where each terrorist is located. Tony turned to his console and began typing. I can route the sensor data through the engineering systems. They probably do not know I can do this. His fingers moved quickly across the controls. Here we go. I am showing you the ship's layout with heat signatures for every person on board. Lisa studied the display. The terrorists had spread out through the ship in a pattern that gave them control of all the critical areas. 2 were in the engine room, forcing the engineering staff to maintain the ship's high speed. 4 were on the passenger deck, herding civilians into the dining area. 3 were in the cargo bay, probably setting up additional weapons or explosives. The remaining 3, including Vekmore, were on the bridge with Captain Cessnill. They are professional, Lisa said. But they made one mistake. They think the ship only has 1 human on it. Tony looked at the display again. Wait, there are 2 humans on this ship, you and me. Lisa smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Exactly. They plan for dealing with 1 human who they think is just a civilian trade consultant. They did not plan for dealing with two humans who are willing to do whatever it takes to save innocent lives. She handed Tony a plasma cutter from his tool rack. This can cut through metal. Can it cut through body armor? Tony examined the device. At close range, yes, but Lisa, I am not a soldier. I repair engines and fix electrical systems. You are human, Lisa said. That is enough. The aliens think we are too emotional and too hesitant. They are about to learn that human emotions can be very dangerous when channeled in the right direction. She moved to the workshop's ventilation grate and began removing the screws. The ship's ventilation system connects to every room. You know these systems better than anyone. Can you use them to move around the ship without being detected? Tony nodded slowly. Yes, but where do you want me to go? The engine room first, Lisa said. Two terrorists are holding the engineering staff hostage there. If you can take them out, the staff can help us regain control of the ship's systems. Take them out? Tony's voice was uncertain. Lisa, I have never killed anyone before. Lisa stopped working on the ventilation grate and looked at him directly. Tony, in about 6 minutes, this ship is going to crash into Haven Station. Your sister and her family are going to die, along with 50,000 other innocent people. The terrorists in the engine room are the only thing standing between us and the ability to change our course. Tony's face changed as he thought about his sister. The uncertainty in his eyes was replaced by something harder. What do you need me to do? Lisa finished removing the grate and tested the opening. It was just large enough for a person to crawl through. Get into the ventilation system and make your way to the engine room. When you are in position, cause a distraction. Make them think there is a problem with the engines that requires their attention. When they are distracted, eliminate them. What about you? Tony asked. I am going to start clearing rooms, Lisa said. The terrorists think humans are predictable. They think we will try to negotiate or find a peaceful solution. They are not prepared for a human who has decided that the only acceptable outcome is their complete elimination. Tony climbed into the ventilation shaft with his plasma cutter and a small toolkit. Lisa, he said before he started crawling away, the aliens were wrong about humans, were they not? Lisa checked her improvised weapons one more time. They were wrong about everything that matters, she said. They studied our mercy and concluded we were weak. They never considered that mercy is a choice, not a limitation. And when innocent lives are at stake, humans can choose to be very unmerciful. Tony disappeared into the ventilation system and Lisa could hear him crawling through the metal ducts toward the engine room. She moved to the workshop door and listened carefully. The corridor outside was empty now. With all the passengers being held in the dining area, she opened the door and stepped into the corridor. The ship's lighting had been dimmed, probably to make it harder for anyone to move around without being seen. But the terrorists had not considered that humans had excellent night vision compared to most alien species. Lisa moved through the shadows like a predator, her improvised weapons ready. The aliens had been right about one thing. Humans were different from other species. But they had been completely wrong about what that difference meant. They were about to learn that when humans decided to protect innocent lives, they did not hesitate. They did not show mercy. They simply acted with a cold, calculated efficiency that no alien species had ever witnessed before. The hunt was about to begin. Lisa moved through the ship's corridors like a shadow, her feet making no sound on the metal deck plates. She had spent years learning how to move silently, how to use darkness and corners to stay hidden. The terrorists had dimmed the lights to control the passengers, but they had given Lisa the perfect environment for hunting. Her first target was the cargo bay. According to Tony's sensor readings, 3 terrorists were there setting up additional weapons or preparing explosives. Lisa found the cargo bay entrance and listened carefully at the door. She could hear voices inside speaking in the harsh language of the Korathi. The cargo bay was large and filled with containers stacked from floor to ceiling. Lisa slipped inside and hid behind a stack of metal boxes near the entrance. From her position, she could see all 3 terrorists. 2 were Korathi like Thekmor, and one was a Zephyrian with the typical insect-like features of his species. They had opened several shipping containers and were removing weapons and explosive devices. Lisa watched as they assembled what looked like a large bomb, probably intended to make sure the ship's impact with Haven Station would cause maximum damage. Lisa studied their positions and movements. The Zephyrian was working alone at the far end of the bay, while the two Korathi were closer together near the center. She would have to be fast and quiet. If any of them had time to sound an alarm, the other terrorists would know she was coming. She moved closer, using the shipping containers as cover. The Zephyrian was focused on his work and did not hear her approach. Lisa had studied alien anatomy during her military training, and she knew exactly where to strike to disable a Zephyrian quickly and silently. The heavy wrench in her hand connected with the base of the alien skull with a dull crack. The Zephyrian dropped without making a sound, his compound eyes going dark. Lisa caught his body before it could fall and make noise. The two Korathi were still working on their bomb, arguing quietly about the proper way to set the timer. Lisa picked up the Zephyrian's plasma rifle and checked its charge. Full power, enough for several shots. She moved into position behind another container, close enough to hit both targets but far enough away to avoid return fire. Lisa had trained for situations like this hundreds of times, but this was the first time she had faced real enemies who were planning to murder innocent civilians. The aliens had been wrong about human emotions, making them weak. Right now, Lisa's anger was making her faster and more focused than she had ever been in training. She stepped out from behind the container with the plasma rifle raised. The first Korathi saw her and opened his mouth to shout a warning, but Lisa's shot caught him in the chest before he could make a sound. The second terrorist spun around and reached for his weapon, but Lisa was already moving, her second shot taking him down before his clawed hand could reach his gun. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 seconds. 3 terrorists eliminated, and the bomb they had been building was now harmless without someone to activate it. Lisa quickly searched the containers they had opened and found enough weapons to outfit a small army. She disabled what she could, and moved the rest to where the terrorists could not easily find them through her earpiece. She heard Tony's voice over their private communication channel. "Lisa, I am in position outside the engine room. I can see 2 terrorists holding 4 engineers hostage. They have the engineers working on something at the main power console. Can you get close enough to take them out?" Lisa whispered back. "I think so. There is a maintenance panel right above them. I can drop down behind them." "Do it," Lisa said. "I'm moving to the passenger deck next." Lisa left the cargo bay and headed for the dining area where the civilians were being held. As she climbed the stairs to the passenger deck, she could hear voices coming from the dining hall. Some were the frightened voices of passengers asking what was happening. Others were the harsh commands of terrorists telling people to stay quiet and sit down. She reached the dining area and looked through the small window in the door. 4 terrorists were spread around the room, each carrying a plasma rifle. About 30 passengers sat at tables in the center of the room, including families with children. Some of the passengers were crying and the children looked terrified. Lisa felt her anger growing stronger. These were innocent people who had done nothing wrong. They were traveling to new homes or visiting family members or conducting honest business. They did not deserve to die because some terrorists wanted to make a political statement. The 4 terrorists were positioned so they could watch all the exits and control the crowd. Taking them out would be more difficult than the cargo bay, because she could not afford to let any of them fire into the crowd of civilians. Lisa noticed that the dining area had a service kitchen attached to it, with a door that led directly behind the serving counter. If she could get into the kitchen, she might be able to surprise at least one of the terrorists. She found the kitchen entrance through a maintenance corridor and slipped inside. The kitchen was dark and empty, with pots and cooking equipment scattered around. Through the serving window, she could see the back of one terrorist, who was standing near the counter. Lisa found a large kitchen knife and tested its weight. It was not as heavy as the wrench, but it would be silent. She moved to the serving window and waited for the right moment. The terrorist near the counter turned to say something to one of his companions. As he turned back, Lisa struck. The knife went between his shoulder blades and he dropped silently behind the counter. The other terrorists were too busy watching the civilians to notice that one of their team had disappeared. Now there were 3 left, but they were all in the open dining area where the civilians could be hurt if shooting started. Lisa needed a different approach. She remembered something from her training about creating chaos to divide enemy attention. The ship's fire suppression system could be activated manually from the kitchen. If she set off the fire alarms and sprinkler system, the terrorists would be confused and the civilians would have cover to escape. Lisa found the fire system controls and activated them. Immediately, loud alarms began blaring throughout the ship, and water started spraying from the ceiling sprinklers. The lights in the dining area began flashing red, and the passengers started screaming and moving toward the exits. The 3 remaining terrorists were shouting at each other, trying to maintain control of the panicking crowd. In the confusion, Lisa moved into the dining area through the kitchen door. The flashing lights and spraying water made it hard to see, which worked in her favor. The nearest terrorist was trying to block passengers from reaching an exit. Lisa came up behind him and used the same knife that had taken down his companion. He fell without the civilians even noticing in all the chaos. 2 left. Lisa could see them both near the main entrance, still trying to control the crowd. But the passengers were pushing past them, desperate to escape the alarms and flashing lights. One terrorist raised his rifle to fire over the heads of the civilians, probably trying to scare them back into submission. Lisa could not let him fire that weapon. She was too far away to reach him physically, but there was a serving tray on a nearby table. She grabbed it and threw it like a discus, the way she had learned in basic training. The heavy metal tray spun through the air and struck the terrorist in the head just as he was pulling the trigger. His shot went wild, hitting the ceiling instead of the crowd. The last terrorist saw her and turned his weapon toward her, but Lisa was already moving. She rolled behind an overturned table as plasma bolts scorched the air where she had been standing. The terrorist was shouting something in his own language, probably calling for help from the other teams. Lisa waited for him to pause to reload or reposition, then moved again. This time she went low, staying beneath the tables as she circled around behind him. When she was close enough, she grabbed his legs and pulled him down. They struggled for a moment, but Lisa had trained for hand-to-hand combat, and the terrorist had not expected to fight an unarmed human. When it was over, Lisa stood alone in the dining area among the overturned furniture and scattered belongings. All the civilians had escaped during the chaos, and 4 more terrorists were eliminated. Through her earpiece she heard Tony's voice. "Engine room is clear," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "The engineering staff is restoring control of the ship's systems." "But Lisa, we only have 3 minutes before we reach Haven Station." Lisa looked around the destroyed dining area and felt a cold satisfaction. The aliens had been wrong about humans in every possible way. They thought human emotions made them weak and indecisive. They had never considered that human emotions could make them absolutely ruthless when protecting innocent lives. "How many are left?" she asked Tony. "Sensors show 3 heat signatures on the bridge with the captain. That has to be Vecmore and his remaining team." Lisa picked up one of the fallen terrorists' plasma rifles and checked its charge. "Tell the engineers to be ready to change course as soon as I give the signal. I am going to finish this." As she headed for the bridge, Lisa thought about the Galactic Council and their scientific studies of human behavior. They had watched humans show mercy and concluded that mercy was a weakness. They had seen human soldiers hesitate and decided that hesitation meant fear. Lisa stood outside the bridge door, the plasma rifle steady in her hands. Through the small window, she could see 3 figures inside with Captain Cessnil. Vecmore was the largest, his scarred face visible in the red emergency lighting. The other 2 terrorists flanked him, their weapons trained on the captain who was slumped in his command chair. The ship's countdown display showed 2 minutes and 30 seconds until impact with Haven Station. Through the bridge's main view screen, Lisa could see the massive space station growing larger ahead of them, its lights twinkling like a small city in space. 50,000 people lived there, including Tony's sister and her family. Lisa spoke quietly into her communicator. "Tony, are the engineers ready?" "Standing by," came his reply. "As soon as you give us the bridge, we can change course." "But Lisa, you need to hurry. At this speed, even with full reverse thrust, we need at least 2 minutes to avoid a collision." Lisa studied the bridge layout through the window. Thekmore stood behind the captain's chair, while one terrorist guarded the door and another watched the ship's controls. They had positioned themselves well, but they had made one critical mistake. They were watching for threats from outside the bridge, not from someone who might walk in the front door. Lisa set down her plasma rifle and activated the door controls. The bridge door slid open with a soft hiss, and she walked inside with her hands empty and visible. "I surrender," she said calmly. All 3 terrorists turned to look at her, their weapons swinging in her direction. Thekmore's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied her. "You are the human from the trading delegation," he said in accented English. "How did you escape from the dining area?" Lisa walked slowly toward the center of the bridge, keeping her hands where they could see them. "Your people let me go when the fire alarm started?" "I think they were too busy controlling the other passengers to worry about one civilian." Thekmore made a sound that might have been laughter. "Foolish humans, you think you can negotiate with us? You think we will spare your life if you cooperate?" "No," Lisa said, still walking closer. "I think you are about to make the same mistake that the Galactic Council made. You think humans are weak because we show mercy. You think we hesitate because we are afraid." The terrorist guarding the door shifted nervously. "Boss, should we just shoot her?" Thekmore held up a clawed hand. "Let her talk. I am curious to hear what this human thinks she knows about strength and weakness." Lisa stopped walking when she was about 6 feet from Thekmore. Captain Cessnil was watching her with confused hope in his eyes. The countdown display now showed 1 minute and 50 seconds. "You studied our wars," Lisa said, her voice conversational and calm. "You watched recordings of human soldiers showing mercy to wounded enemies. You saw us trying to capture instead of kill. You concluded that we lacked the killer instinct needed for decisive action." Thekmore nodded. "Correct. Your species is soft. Too emotional. This is why the Galactic Council denied your application to join the strike force." Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You made the same mistake they did. You confused choice with inability. You think that because humans can show mercy, we cannot be ruthless when necessary." The terrorist at the control station glanced at his leader. "Boss, 1 minute 30 seconds. Should we secure the prisoner?" "In a moment," Thekmore said. "Continue, human. Tell me more about this supposed ruthlessness." Lisa looked directly into his yellow eyes. "Humans do not fight for conquest or glory, like your people do. We do not fight because we enjoy violence or because we want to prove our strength. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves." She gestured toward the view screen where Haven Station was growing larger. "Right. Now, there are 50,000 innocent people on that station. Families with children. Workers trying to make an honest living. People who have never hurt anyone and do not deserve to die for your political cause." Thekmore's scarred face twisted into a sneer. "And what does this have to do with your supposed ruthlessness?" Lisa's smile grew wider and much more dangerous. "When someone threatens innocent people, humans do not hesitate. We do not show mercy. We do whatever is necessary to eliminate the threat. And right now, you are the threat." The countdown showed 1 minute and 10 seconds. Thekmore raised his plasma rifle toward Lisa. "Enough talk. You will watch as we destroy that station, and then we will kill you." "Actually," Lisa said, "you will not." Everything happened in the next 12 seconds. Lisa dropped to one knee and rolled sideways as Thekmore fired. The plasma bolt passed over her head and struck the wall where she had been standing. As she rolled, her hand found the combat knife she had taken from the kitchen. Hidden in her boot, the terrorist at the door swung his weapon toward her, but Lisa was already moving. She came up from her roll and threw the knife in one smooth motion. The blade caught him in the throat, and he dropped his rifle as he fell. Thekmore was trying to track her movement with his weapon, but Lisa was using Captain Cessnill's chair as cover. She grabbed the captain and pulled him out of the line of fire, then dove toward the fallen terrorist's rifle, the third terrorist. At the control station, fired twice but missed as Lisa rolled behind a console. She came up with the dropped rifle and put 2 shots into his chest before he could fire again. Moore was alone now, but he still had Lisa pinned behind the console. The countdown showed 55 seconds. "Impressive," he called out, "but you are still trapped. When that station is destroyed, your death will have accomplished nothing." Lisa looked around the console and saw that he was positioned near the ship's manual controls. If she could get close enough, she could activate the course correction herself. But Moore was between her and the controls, and he was watching for any movement. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" Lisa called back. "Enlighten me, Moore," replied, his rifle aimed at her hiding spot. "You assumed I was working alone." At that moment, Tony's voice came over the ship's intercom system. "Hey, Moore. Down here." The terrorist leader looked down toward the sound of the voice, and in that instant of distraction, Lisa moved. She came around the console low and fast, tackling Moore around the legs. They both went down, his rifle clattering across the deck. Moore was larger and stronger than Lisa, but she had trained for hand-to-hand combat against opponents bigger than herself. As they struggled on the floor, she used his own weight against him, rolling with his movements and looking for an opening. The countdown reached 30 seconds. Moore managed to pin Lisa against the floor, his clawed hands reaching for her throat. But Lisa had one advantage he did not expect: human flexibility. She brought her knees up to her chest and kicked out with both feet, catching him in the stomach and launching him backward. As Moore crashed into the navigation console, Lisa rolled to her feet and dove for the ship's manual controls. 20 seconds left. Her fingers flew over the controls, activating the emergency course correction and full reverse thrust. The ship shuddered as its engines changed direction, and everyone on the bridge was thrown to one side by the sudden deceleration. Through the viewscreen, Haven Station began to slide past instead of growing larger. Moore struggled to his feet, bleeding from where he had hit the console. "You have only delayed the inevitable," he snarled. "There are other ships? Other plans?" Lisa stood up and looked at him calmly. "There were other ships. The Galactic Strike Force is dealing with them now. And there were other terrorists on this ship, but they are all dead." Moore's eyes widened as he realized what she was saying. "Impossible. 12 trained operatives cannot be eliminated by one human." "Not one human," Lisa corrected. 2 humans. "And you are right about one thing. 12 trained operatives cannot be eliminated by humans who are showing mercy or hesitating out of fear." She picked up one of the fallen plasma rifles and aimed it at Moore. "But when innocent lives are at stake, humans do not show mercy. We do not hesitate. We simply do what needs to be done." Captain Cessnill spoke up from where he was hiding behind his chair. "The course correction is working. We will miss the station by several thousand kilometers." Through the bridge windows, Lisa could see the sleek shapes of Galactic Strike Force ships moving into position around them. Admiral Vexstar's voice came over the communication system. "This is Admiral Vexstar to the vessel Starlight Trader. We are reading multiple weapon discharges and casualties aboard your ship. What is your status?" Lisa activated the communication controls. "This is Lieutenant Commander Lisa Kane. All hostile threats have been eliminated. All civilians are safe. The ship is secure." There was a long pause before Vexstar responded. "Lieutenant Commander Kane? How many human operatives are aboard that vessel?" Lisa looked at Moore, who was staring at her with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "2, Admiral. Just 2. Another pause. "And the terrorist cell?" "Our intelligence indicated 12 to 15 operatives." "All eliminated, sir. Mission complete." When Admiral Vexstar boarded the Starlight Trader an hour later, he walked through the ship in stunned silence. 12 terrorist operatives, all neutralized. Every civilian passenger and crew member safe and unharmed. The ship's systems restored to normal operation. He found Lisa in the ship's observation lounge, looking out at the stars.